Translator Reverie. Editor Kurisu. Wounded, yet not slain, proving itself a king-tier great beast of the flower blossom tier, it had endured a spiritual infant tier strike head-on and still clung to life. The shock of it was enough to chill the spine. Ling Han let out a fierce halloo and sprang forth with sword in hand, charging the great beast. If given even a breath of time, the beast might regain a sliver of strength, and should it plunge back into the lake, there would be no hope of ever ferreting it out again. This was the art of the Jianghu, strike while the sickness still binds it. Shoo, the golden fists dispersed after the blow. After all, this was merely an attack sealed within a law decree by a spiritual infant tier. Ling Han shot forward, his killing intent locked squarely upon it. The great beast's eyes burned with fury. It was a king-tier existence, yet a mere martial artist of the spiritual pedestal tier dared take the initiative against it. Was this not blatant contempt? If it were still at its peak, a single ice blade would have been enough to erase Ling Han from the world. Yet now, at its weakest, it could not even stir its wings. How could it possibly loose ice blades? Naturally, it would not wait meekly for death. With a cold glare, it unleashed martial intent that speared straight toward Ling Han. If that martial intent struck true, that human brat would surely be turned into a witless fool. The great beast was brimming with confidence. This was a flower blossom tier king, and its martial intent was terrifying beyond measure. However, in the next instant, it wore an expression of utter disbelief, because Ling Han's assault did not slow in the slightest. With a single sweep of his sword, 10 flashes of sword chi burst forth, streaking toward the comparatively fragile throat. How could this be possible? If it spoke the tongue of men, it would have screamed on the spot, yet it was so feeble it could not even part its jaws, only stare helplessly as those 10 flashes of sword chi tore toward it in a furious slashing storm. Pooh, 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 pooh! That sword chi had been unleashed by a 10th tier spirit tool. Its destructive power was shocking to the extreme. Even a king-tier great beast of the flower blossom tier could not withstand it with flesh alone. The 10 flashes swept past with devastating force, and in an instant a deep wound tore open across its neck. Yet that was not the most fatal part. What truly inspired dread was the demon birth sword itself. How sharp was a 10th tier spirit tool? If sword chi could carve open its hide, then what of a direct strike from demon birth sword? The great beast's face twisted into terror. It did not wish to die, least of all to perish beneath the blade of a human at the spiritual pedestal tier. Puh! The sword cleaved through, and a lion head shot up into the sky at once. Ling Han's hand moved like lightning. He seized the great beast's body and stored it directly into the black tower, unwilling to waste even a scrap of it. Yet no matter how swift he was, a vast spray of blood still splattered outward. Shoo, a figure darted out, snatched the lion head and fled without pause. Such nerve! Ling Han's figure shifted instantly as he gave chase. This fellow dared rob him? Behind him, fragments of rubble slowly drew together. The rock spirit was reconstructing itself. The robber's speed was fast, or he would never have dared such a deed. To snatch and run meant he possessed absolute confidence in his movement art, but he had overestimated himself and underestimated Ling Han. The movement art Ling Han employed had also changed. An Earth-grade technique called 100 Changes, 1,000 Illusions. It could leave after images to muddle foes in battle, and for pursuit or flight it was equally miraculous, astonishingly swift, competing in movement arts with Ling Han. Other than monsters like Who Knew, who in the same tier could possibly do so? After a few leaps and landings, Ling Han caught up to that person. Take it back! The man was straightforward enough. Seeing escape was impossible, he shook his right hand and hurled the lion head far away, clearly intending to use the moment. Ling Han went to retrieve it to flee again. Ling Han flicked his left hand, shooting out blood-sucking origin gold. It tanged and reeled the lion head back, and he stored it into the black tower. His figure did not pause in the slightest, continuing to pursue that man. His eyes were like drawn swords as he said balefully, "You think you'll be let off so lightly?" His sword swung down in a slash. "Master Ling, contesting for treasures is quite a normal thing. Why take it seriously?" The man was not weak. He waved his saber up to parry, and 7 flashes of saber chi swept out. Ling Han snorted and said, If you also participated in exterminating the great beast, then you'd certainly have the right to a share of the spoils of war. However, you're clearly just a base thief, daring to speaking shamelessly. Truly laughable! Ding, 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 ding! Sabre and sword collided, sparks sprayed in all directions, and martial intent burst forth in blinding divine radiance. How fearsome was Ling Han's battle prowess! After only a few exchanges, the man's expression changed drastically. He was no match at all. He hurriedly shouted, "I'm Cold Water Sect's disciple Feng Jingsheng. Even if you're a heaven-grade alchemist, you can't act recklessly." "Idiot!" Ling Han cursed, his sword momentum unchanged. He was a heaven-grade alchemist. Would he still fear offending others? Only forces that walked in shadow, like the Thousand Corpse sect, would not dread a heaven-grade alchemist. Otherwise, among sects that got along in the open, which one would not give a heaven-grade alchemist face on the surface? "I'll fight you to death!" Feng Jingsheng roared. From his ring he drew out a spirit talisman, making as if to throw it. This is Raging Flame's Burning Sky talisman, created by a Flower Blossom tier senior from my sect, equivalent to 1/10 of his attack. "Don't you force me." This time Ling Han could not even be bothered to curse. His long sword struck without pause. "Huh? Die!" Feng Jingsheng flung the spirit talisman. Hong in an instant. Raging Flame surged from the talisman and transformed into a sea of fire, roaring toward Ling Han. Ling Han sensed it lightly and activated the thunder battle armor. Instantly, a lightning barrier formed, shielding him within as he rushed out from the sea of flames and struck again with his sword. "What?" Feng Jingsheng's face filled with disbelief. That was a Flower Blossom tier attack, yet Ling Han had blocked it. Too unreal. Yet, before he could think further, the demon birth sword had already cleaved down through him from crown to groin, and his entire body was instantly split into two halves. Ling Han sheathed his sword. With his current strength, pouring all his power into the thunder battle armor, blocking a low-layer Flower Blossom tier attack was more than sufficient. Everyone watched him with fear, their gazes tangled and complicated. With the identity of a heaven-grade alchemist alone, none dared oppose him openly, and his personal battle prowess was even more heaven-defying. To be born in the same era as Ling Han truly was the greatest misfortune. Ling Han naturally did not care how others looked upon him. He smiled at Yokai Yu and said, "More tonic meat of a king-tier beast to eat at night." Yokai Yu started. Ling Han had said more, so could he have already eaten such a massively tonic delicacy? He did not dare believe it, only thinking Ling Han had misspoken. Laughing on the spot, he said, "Wasting a spiritual infant tier law decree to annihilate it. I have to eat that worth's back." Ling Han patted his shoulder and said, "You definitely have more than one spiritual infant tier law decree. Don't pretend to be poor." Yokai Yu grinned slyly. Clearly Ling Han had hit the mark, and retorted, "You think spiritual infant tier law decrees are cheap? This paper, this ink, and the pen used, those are all extremely precious materials. Moreover, my great-grandfather needs to recover for several months just drawing one law decree." Ling Han could not be bothered to pay him any further heed. His gaze settled on the lake as he said, "The chilling intent is waning. Was this absolutely cold place formed due to the great beast?" Translator. Editor, Kurisu. When the great beast perished, the bitter cold exhaled by the lake clearly ebbed. Recalling how that monster could spit forth ice blades, it was surely a water aspect ice element creature. Its very presence swayed the surroundings, chilling the lake to the bone and, in turn, nurturing the absolute cold ice heart fish within. Not good. Once this great beast is dead, the lake will warm up again, and those ice fish will all die, Ling Han said, regret edging his voice. Though there weren't many absolute cold ice heartfish left. "That can't be wasted," Yokai Yu blurted, hurried and anxious. "Let's go into the water to catch fish." Ling Han nodded, then said to Li Si Chan, "Stay on the shore." Though the chill had begun to retreat, it still wasn't something a gushing spring tear could endure. It would likely take another 1 to 2 days before the lake's temperature returned to its usual state. Li Si Chan nodded. She never forced herself too hard on the path of martial arts. The three of them plunged into the lake. Some of the others also sensed the change in the water's temperature and leapt in one after another. circulating origin power to form a protective shield as they roamed beneath the surface. One breath was enough for a spiritual pedestal tier martial artist to hold for roughly an hour, and with the air trapped inside the shield, lasting a full day was certainly no problem. Thus, everyone could scour the lake bed to their heart's content, with no worry of suffocation at all. The lake was still frigid, yet tolerable for spiritual pedestal tier cultivators. All around, people scattered to search for absolute cold heart ice fish. The three of them also split up. The cold heart fish wasn't some formidable beast that required them to join hands. After several minutes, Ling Han reached the lake bed and saw a cluster of damaged kiosks and pavilions, as if these edifices had only sunk to the bottom after an earthquake struck. With that thought, he swam over. After he had fished for 3 straight days, there weren't many fish left, and now with so many people fishing in the lake, how many could each person even catch? He had already obtained 600 to 700 and truly didn't care about an extra few dozen. There were about 8 to 9 kiosks and pavilions on the lake bed. Because they were buried in the lake bed's silt, revealing only their upper portions, Ling Han couldn't tell whether more structures lay hidden deeper beneath the mud. He pressed lightly with his palms. A mighty force surged, and he drifted to a 2-story pavilion, slipping inside through a second-floor window. This was a study room, yet the books on the shelves had long since rotted away, leaving only a few covers that escaped ruin, bobbing in the water. Ling Han reached out and gently seized one book cover that bore the words, State of Pu's Geographic Record. Was there a place in these vast lands called the State of Pu? Ling Han wasn't sure. In his former lifetime, the place names across the vast lands differed enormously from those of today. Who could guarantee that 2 or 5 millennia ago the names of every region remained the same? Perhaps there truly had been a place called the State of Pu. He took another cover on which was written 36 free transformations on formations. In an instant, Ling Han's heart stirred. Formations! How lamentable that only the cover remained. If he could have read it, it would likely have been of great help to his mastery of formations. He gathered 3 more covers, and after sweeping his gaze across them, his expression changed without his consent. Insights on refining clear void pill, red leaf pill, purple patterned gold pill. This was a personal letter on pill refinement, likely recording details for refining these 3 medicinal pills. That alone wasn't so shocking. In his previous lifetime, Ling Han too would jot notes after refining to remind himself later and to let his 2 alchemy disciples consult. What truly stunned Ling Han were the 4 words, purple patterned gold pill. This was a divine medicine. In the later years of his former lifetime, he had ventured into several historic sites, among them the cave dwellings of great ancient alchemists, and he had obtained a few personal notes. Within them, Ling Han had once seen those same 4 words, purple patterned gold pill, purple patterned gold pill. After consuming one, so long as they didn't die from their body exploding, mortals could become gods. What kind of divine medicine was this? Ling Han believed divine medicinal pills were also divided into tiers. How could an ordinary divine pill turn a mortal into a god on the spot? Yet within the vast lands there was no way to refine any kind of divine pill at all, because there were no ingredients. Here, the 3 medicinal pills were listed side by side, most likely all divine pills, and since there were insights, the writer must have refined them before. Otherwise, how could there be insights? Someone who could refine divine pills in the vast lands, and very possibly a high-tier divine pill? Absolutely impossible. Ling Han's hands trembled faintly as a conjecture surged up within him. Could this mystery realm belong to a god who had refined out a piece of the god realm and brought it down into the lower realm? The chance of this guess being correct was extremely great, because Yan Qianzhao wanted something from the Sagittarius Palace. Who was Yan Qianzhao? Though he possessed a mortal body, he had inherited a god's memories, and from a certain perspective, he was even more Kix than Ling Han, a heaven-tier reincarnate. Could something he coveted be ordinary? It had to be a divine thing. If this place were a fragment torn from the god realm, then everything became easy to understand. Why the spirit chi here was so thick it could not be dispelled. Moreover, why the beasts here bore bone patterns upon their skulls. because they were beasts of the god realm. Simple as that. Ling Han's heart involuntarily quickened. Could he be obtaining an inheritance from the god realm? Kicks! Awesome! With this speculation in mind, Ling Han began to search with greater care. Anything found here might be a treasure of divine level. However, he was disappointed. The things inside the room were exceedingly ordinary, and the books, made of paper, had rotted away. The wood, which was not some divine timber, had rotted away. The bricks were the same, merely a little sturdier. But whatever, take it all. With a single thought and a single touch, Ling Han stored the entire pavilion into the Black Tower. The space within was vast anyway, no fear of it taking up room. He swam to another pavilion and stored it as well, then the third building. Even a kiosk was moved into the Black Tower. At this moment, someone else also swam over, and she did not seem to have much interest in the absolute cold heart ice fish, instead fixing her gaze upon the sunken cluster of buildings on the lake bed. It was a woman at the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, yet she was also over 30, likely someone who had once stood on the prodigy role in former generations. Her looks had already passed their peak, but they were maintained exceedingly well. Her eyes were like a painted scene, and her cherry lips were bright red like blood, vividly alluring. Compared to a 20-year-old young lady, a woman of this age, one with her full figure and teasing bearing, like a ripe peach, plump and juicy. After seeing Ling Han, the woman nodded to him. This was respect toward a heaven-grade alchemist. She had already swum into a pavilion and begun to search. Ling Han continued to store the buildings here indiscriminately.